Hello, Senator Pearce, my amigo. I love America. I came from Mexico without a visa to work as a nanny for an American family. Now, I'm having a baby. And he, or she, will be an American citizen, just like you.
Oh hell no. 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 What part of illegal don't you understand? If you are an illegal alien, your baby will be an illegal alien, and its baby will be an illegal alien too. Nobody gets to be an American, unless I say so. I aim to protect the American race from invasion by illegals like you and your baby.
Well, how did you become an American?
I was born American, here in America, to American parents. Ignorant Mexican.
So the difference between my baby and you is that I am not an American and your parents were.
No. You are an illegal alien, not just not American. Your child will be an anchor baby that you will use to game the immigration system. That should be against the laws of this country, and I will stop you and your illegal baby.
So were your grandparents Americans?
Of course.
And their parents?
Well, they became citizens. They came over from Europe at some point. But they immigrated legally and became American citizens by the rules. They weren't illegal aliens like you and your baby. They didn't bust into our country and start sucking up the benefits of American society like lazy freeloaders.
Are you even passingly familiar with the history of immigration in America, sir?
Of course, little lady. I'm the president of the Arizona Senate. I know my history.
Your ancestors must have come to America in the mid or late 19th century, right?
That sounds right.
Then you must know that America had very few immigration laws before the 20th century. At that time, Congress restricted a small number of nationalities from immigrating, but otherwise immigration was wide open. Your ancestors never asked anybody if they could come to America. They dreamed an American dream and came to these shores without needing permission first. They were welcomed by the nation, if not by all of its people. Just like me and my anchor baby. There has always been xenophobia and racism toward new immigrants. Your hatred for me and my baby is nothing new.
But my people played by the rules and obeyed the laws. You did not. They were legal immigrants. You are an illegal alien. You are a lawbreaker and must be punished.
Laws and the real world sometimes don't agree, especially when the lawmakers are fools and asses. Your ancestors didn't have to obtain permission and wait for years, if not decades, to immigrate. They didn't have to spend years separated from their families. They paid for passage on a boat and sailed for America. When they arrived, they merely registered and went to work and were new citizens. Every baby born to those immigrants could be considered an anchor baby. You, sir, are the descendant of an anchor baby. Your ancestors obeyed the immigration laws because the laws made some sense. The laws were easy to obey because they weren't at odds with the reality of a huge wave of immigration. The Congress, in those days, was too smart and too practical to think they could just order a flash flood to just halt at the border. Laws that make no sense are not obeyed by anybody with any sense.
But that was when this country was expanding across the continent pursuing its manifest destiny. We needed people then. Now, America is full up, and you and your baby aren't needed or welcome.
Nonsense, Senator. Why have so many immigrants have found gainful employment, started businesses, and raised families here? What you are saying is crazy. American industries have imported an expensive foreign labor since the founding of this nation. The Latin American wave is merely the latest. Immigrants only come because they are needed and can find a place in the American workforce, as demonstrated by the large numbers of immigrants that have left or stayed away during the latest recession. And we more than pay our own way. Immigrants make America stronger and more competitive.
We clearly disagree about that. I believe immigrants are costing us billions in taxpayer money. People like you are filling our schools with your anchor babies, filling our emergency rooms, and bankrupting our healthcare system. committing crimes, and filling our prisons, and voting illegally in our elections. You are the cause of all our problems. If you would just go home, America would be great again.
Scapegoats are always a tempting target for a populist demagogue, especially when the victims are marginal and powerless people. But the truth is that every objective economist agrees that immigration has both costs and benefits, and that the benefits outweigh the costs. You can twist the numbers to suit your agenda, but it's a lie. Immigration is good for America. It is America's current immigration policies and demagogues like you that are bad for America.
You are a lawbreaker and an invader. The founders never intended that alien nationals should be able to come here and force us to make their children citizens. When the 14th Amendment was written, it was only meant to make former slaves citizens, not to make every child born to an illegal alien a citizen. You are exploiting a misinterpretation of our Constitution to force your way into the American family.
Your interpretation of the Constitution is just as flawed and selective as your view of the history and the economic impact of immigration.
The 14th Amendment clearly says that only those born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens. Illegal aliens are subject to a foreign jurisdiction, and so are their offspring. Those babies are citizens of their parents' countries, not ours.
Okay, let's do a thought experiment. Imagine a newborn child born of an undocumented immigrant couple who die in an accident the night of the birth. The child survives. They have no other family to take in the child. Whose responsibility is the child? Which laws will determine custody? Are you going to leave it at the doorstep of its parents' nation of origin? That is absurd. As a child grows up, whose laws must it obey? That child is an American. To deprive an innocent child the rights and protections of a community of its birth just because of its parents' immigration status is monstrous and unjust. In fact, it's un-American. Your argument makes no sense, and it flies in the face of our history and our values.
I just told you the framers of the 14th Amendment did not intend to make anyone other than former slaves American citizens with a birthright clause.
That's a rather tortured conclusion. In the debates at the time, it was clear that there was concern that it would make the children of certain undesirable elements, like gypsies and Chinamen, American citizens. That was understood when passed by Congress and the state legislatures.
They weren't citizens, but they were already here legally, unlike you and your baby.
But there were plenty of illegal aliens to whom the 14th clearly applied, even by your interpretation. The slaves imported illegally, after the slave trade was officially abolished, were not here legally. There were tens of thousands of them. They were all illegal aliens, and the 14th Amendment was clearly intended to make them citizens.
They certainly didn't choose to come here illegally. They weren't the ones breaking the law. You are.
True, they didn't choose their fates. But the nature of immigration was so vastly different then, that any analogy to today's world is strained. To claim that the exact circumstances of today's immigrants weren't intended to be covered by the 14th Amendment's framers is simply because they didn't even imagine the current circumstances. So in some ways, their lack of original intent is meaningless because they simply could not have intended something they had no experience of.
Of course, the original intent is relevant.
I'm glad you think so.
What?
You think that what the framers believed and intended to do by writing the 14th Amendment was important to how we interpret the Constitution's language, right?
Of course. It's the most important thing.
Well then, the existing laws of citizenship at the time they wrote the 14th would be an important thing to know?
Yes, of course. But you said that the Congress hadn't done much to restrict immigration from most countries by that time. You are contradicting yourself.
The United States Congress hadn't exerted its authority over many subjects at that time. Much of our law was the legacy of English common law from our centuries as a group of British colonies. Much of it never changed because the lawyers and judges knew it, and it worked. So they used it.
So what?
The English common law of citizenship was simply the law of jus soli, the law of the soil. anyone born on English territory, and that included the American colonies, and no matter their parents' national origin or legal status, was an English citizen with all the rights of that station.
Okay. So what?
The same common law citizenship rule of jus soli was still the law of America at the time the 14th Amendment was written. At that time, everyone with even a passing familiarity with American law knew that anyone born on American soil was an American, except for diplomats and invading armies, and, due to the Supreme Court's Dred Scott decision of 1858, former slaves or their children, or anyone of African descent, for that matter. The only reason the 14th Amendment was needed was to clarify that this last exception was no longer constitutional. The framers didn't intend to include the children of illegal immigrants in the 14th Amendment, because they were citizens under existing law. The 14th didn't include anchor babies because anchor babies were already automatically citizens. Your argument supposes that the greatest legal minds of the day, who drafted the 14th Amendment, somehow intended to completely abrogate centuries of common law practice, even though they don't say so explicitly in the text, in their debates, in their papers, or in the press at the time? Your propaganda about the 14th Amendment not intending to grant the children of illegal aliens citizenship is an outright fraud. You are a radical who wants to change centuries of established legal tradition of American citizenship to serve your nativist agenda.
Well, but you are like an invading army. You Mexicans are coming up here to sneakily reconquer what you lost in the Mexican-American War. You and your baby are soldiers in the war to reconquer the northern Mexican territories. You can't be citizens, you are an invading army of Mexico.
Really? Is that all you have left? I think we are done here.
Well, I'm still the big boss here in Arizona, so I'm still going to try to find some activist judges to twist the Constitution for me, even if my only justification is that I secretly believe that your baby is part of an invading army. So there.